I think most Browns fans, and I'm saying most, like 80-90% of Browns fans, are okay with this whole thing being over. Are you going to run into some Browns fans who are diehard for Deshaun Watson for whatever reason? Sure. You're going to run into Browns fans who are diehard for DTR or PJ Walker or any other player they decided to make their personality, because the internet is full of people who do something, right? Like, you're going to find a guy who does a thing on the internet, and that thing's going to be PJ Walker standum, right? There's probably somebody becoming a Spencer Rattler stan right now. You could become a stan of anybody for any reason, and you're going to make whatever argument there is. And Deshaun Watson, he was a good quarterback at Clemson. He was a good quarterback in the NFL for the Houston Texans. He's going to have his fair amount of stans and people who are willing to act like this isn't happening in order to preserve what Deshaun did earlier in his career. And I think part of the people defending Deshaun is an effort to preserve what he's done before he's come to Cleveland, right? Because if he's bad now and he's this bad, nobody's going to care how good he was at Clemson or how good he was in Houston. It's just going to become a Marcus Dupree story for those of you who used to watch way too many 30 for 30s back in the day. So I don't think the fan base is divided on the issue of Deshaun Watson. I also think the fan base is divided about the fact that Nick Chubb's coming back. That's a big deal for this team. And it's a huge deal for this team because Nick Chubb gives you a lot of things. One, he's a leader on offense. You don't have one right now. Two, he is the offense, right? Like, Nick Chubb is one of those players that you can have an identity with. Now, most of the time we're talking about a team that has an identity. We're talking about a specific player they have that embodies that identity. The Cleveland Browns, despite whatever people think of Kevin Stefanski not running the ball enough, what's their identity been whenever you've watched a national TV commenter talk about the Browns or somebody from Pro Football Talk? What's the first thing that comes out their mouth when they talk about a Kevin Stefanski offense in their mind?
Smash mouth, run the ball, play action.
Yeah, play action, run the ball, football. And why does that exist? Because Nick Chubb is the centerpiece of the Browns offense. This offense has been running without a centerpiece since week 2 of last season. They finally get their centerpiece back. I don't think it's a mistake that they're going to have 4 active running backs on the roster, 4 running backs that they plan on giving carries to, because they didn't want to give carries to Nyheim Hines. He wouldn't be on this team at this point, right? But they're giving carries to him. They're giving carries to Nick Chubb. They're giving carries to Deontay Foreman. They're giving carries to Pierre Strong. They gave a lot of carries last week to Pierre Strong, and he actually delivered with those carries.
Good, yeah.
And I think it's going to be interesting to see how the rest of this season goes, because in our minds, we're thinking it's only going to go one way, and it's the way that a lot of people think it has to go. I'm not so sure when I look at the schedule ahead that this is going to end as miserably as we're predicting. Now, again, let me make this clear. This is not an endorsement of Deshaun Watson. I think he should be benched immediately. And I think anything that you can achieve with Deshaun Watson in this period of time can be achieved much better with Jameis Winston, who was an 80 PFF grade play action passing quarterback and was 40 of 49 with 4 touchdowns as a play action quarterback the last time he got starting time in 2021, as opposed to Deshaun Watson, who's never been a play action quarterback. If you want to do this style and you're asking me how I'd want to do it, I would want to do it with Jameis Winston. But if you're telling me if there's a way to hide Deshaun Watson enough to where you can make it somewhat stomachable that he can be out there, well, you can do it the same way you stomached all these other shitty quarterbacks that have been in Cleveland since 2018. And that's with Nick Chubb, right? And Nick Chubb running the ball a ton, and then you're just throwing the ball off the heels of Nick Chubb. If you're only asking the quarterback to throw screens and throw to the open guy, even if he throws for 60% passing, you can live with the result because you're probably going to get enough chunks to get down the field. It's not going to be a beautiful offense, but it is going to be a good offense. Oh, not a good offense. That's going too far. It's going to be a non-embarrassing offense. It's going to be, it's going to be not functional, because again, I think they would be functional with Jameis. With Deshaun, I still think they would be sub-functional. But you know what? You would be able to compete. You would have a competable offense, right? Where you don't feel like the game's doomed if somebody scores 14 points, which, by the way, the Browns offense is averaging less than 14 points.
That would be a massive improvement, Q.
An explosion.
Yeah.
That would be a
So
massive
yeah, if we get
improvement.
to the point where we can score 20 points and win a couple games here, we'd be excited. But the truth is, if you look at this schedule, the Bengals we just talking about, they're not that good of a team this year. They're not a good defensive unit. They're not a really disciplined and consistent offensive unit. They have their issues against Cleveland for whatever reason. Baltimore, like that's not going to be an easy winnable game. I don't think I would predict the Browns to win that game. But it's a division game, and these division games always are close. You can squeeze one out if you get lucky against a Baltimore team. And, the Browns defense has figured something out against Lamar Jackson the last few times they've been going at him. I think the last time he's exploded on this defense was when DTR played. And before that, it was the Dookie Scoot game on Monday Night Football, right? Like, other than that, the Browns defense has been able to kind of contain him a bit. We don't know who the Chargers are at this point, so we'll see what they are when you play them. You got the New Orleans Saints, who I'm watching right now. They stink, just like we stink. The Steelers are about to play Russell Wilson, so we'll see how that goes. Because if you're talking about bad quarterback play, yeah, buddy, Russ is just as bad as everybody else we talked about. Then you play Bo Nix. I think you can beat a Bo Nix team, and then Pittsburgh at Pittsburgh. Hey, look, man. I don't think this is the year we win in Pittsburgh. I'm just going to put that one out there. But you get Kansas City. It's going to be tough. Cincinnati, I think that's a game you can win because Cincinnati's not that good. Miami. And then even when you play Baltimore, again, it's week 18. They're probably not going to be playing that game with their starters. So you can really squeeze out a decent result here at the end of the season. The question is how motivated you're going to be to do it and how united you're going to be. And with Nick Chubb coming back, it at least gives people, Browns fans, something to root for on offense, because that's been missing, especially in this portion of the season. David Njoku was injured for most of it. When he got back, he really wasn't rolling the way we were used to him rolling. Even if he is, he's a tight end. He doesn't get the ball all the time. We've really had nothing to root for offensively as fans. If you're a Browns player, you have nothing to believe in offensively because your quarterback stinks. Your quarterback can't get the ball to anybody. And your offensive line's not that great to where they're going to elevate Jerome Ford to look like a top tier running back, right? Now you have a guy who can elevate an offensive line with Nick Chubb. And it's something that you can believe in, and it's something that this team can believe in, and it's something the fan base can believe in. Now, we'll see what they do week 10 in the bye week, because I think by then they'll realize, hey, even while doing this, we're probably leaving points on the table. Let's just move on if they feel like they have a chance to actually achieve something. I think that's an important part. They're not going to bench Watson if they think that they're going to go winless for the rest of the season, because to them, what would be the point? So you got to do something in this next stretch of games to make it clear that you could be better. You can get better, but you also have to have enough there to achieve to make it worth making that change. Because right now, if you end this stretch and let's say the Browns are 1-8 but at the bye week, I mean, then who cares who's playing quarterback at that point? But if you somehow get to, let's see, 2 wins here, 3-6 or 3-5 or whatever that would be. I'm not the greatest at the math here. But if you get to 3 wins there, or maybe even 4 wins there, then you're thinking, okay, hey, we got New Orleans, we got Pittsburgh, we got Denver, we got Pittsburgh again. We can make a run here, get over 500, see what happens. Yeah. And if that's the case, we want to get the best out of our offense. And I know they've been lying to us about who gives us the best chance to win on Sunday. But we all know, I mean, the city of Cleveland pretty much universally called bullshit on that, the same way they universally called bullshit on it's a decoy, right? Like, this is what I mean by united. We're not really falling for the traps anymore when it comes to what the Browns are trying to pull or what Deshaun is or is not doing. We're not debating whether he should be out there anymore. We're all kind of in unison about he should be benched. And what we can do if we do bench him. But I also think that there's stuff you could do around him while you're trying to get to the point to bench him that will make it easier to make the point that you should bench him.
Yeah, I guess I'm just baffled by why they aren't there yet. You have all this data laying out how statistically he's like the worst quarterback like ever. And really, like, some of it is really god awful stuff. And this is an organization that believes in analytics. They have the data. They see it. I mean, what was the stat I gave you earlier? Like 7 out of 700. Yeah.
because I've been trying to think about it, and I'm like, do you think the data being as bad as it is part of why they're hesitant? And I mean that in like, if this was like within the range of what they expected, but on the negative side,
Oh, so
they
you
would
think they're
trust the data
expecting like
more,
a
but
massive
it's so
regression?
bad that they're like, wow, it can't be this bad, right? Like, I think
Standstill.
we've all been there. Like, if you check your thermostat and it's like it was 40 the day before, and you check your thermostat for what the temperature is outside, and it's like
Must
negative
be
12, you're like,
broken.
there's no way
Yeah,
that's
must
as
be
bad
broken.
as it is, right? Like, it's something
Yeah.
broken there that's not accounting for it. I'm wondering if like that plays a part into it. I also think, and this is something like, narratives are narratives, and I believe the Baker Mayfield thing to be a narrative because we lived through it. We knew what was not going to continue after 2021, especially after certain points, right? In 2021, we forget that, like, yeah, he was injured, but then he also threw for like 300 yards against Cincinnati, and then he was injured again, like somehow after that. Like the whole shoulder gate stuff, it was what it was at the time, and I think we've forgotten with time. But the optics that they're aware of you traded for Deshaun Watson, and this is what Baker Mayfield looks like right now, probably puts pressure on them to keep him out there. Again, I'm not justifying it. I don't confuse this with justify. I'm trying to understand why it is they're making this poor decision, so I can like understand what is going on and what can like get them out of it. But I think of those things like if the numbers being like as bad because they're telling them right now this dude who used to be a top 5 quarterback in 2020 is playing worse than every quarterback the Browns have had since 2011. And like, that is such a bad result that like if you were paid to pay attention to, you'd be like, man, it got to be an outlier, right? Like that can't make sense. But it kind of does. And also there's pride in there, right? There's a mix of things. There's pride, like we made this trade and it's not working out and it looks really bad on us. And then the Baker Mayfield thing kind of amplifies that, where it's like, well, we got to make this look good. Maybe Baker will play bad for a couple weeks and Deshaun will play good. And then maybe we look right. And it's just, honestly, we would all be better served to have an intervention and just take 4 out the lineup. But I'm just trying to understand how we're making these bad decisions, because it's one thing to say it's a bad decision and it's stupid. We all recognize that. I'm just trying to understand how we're getting to this stupid place, how very smart people are making these very bad decisions.
Yeah, I think you make a good point about the fan base. I think everybody is pretty much aligned with that. You get your outliers here and there who are like, oh, it doesn't make a difference who's in quarterback with the offensive line the way it is. But that's just untrue at this point.
Or you get people who want to make a point about like Bill Callahan, right? Like people pick and choose their points that they come into the season with. Bill Callahan, that's going to destroy this team. We've heard that take all off season. And like now they can get it off, but it's like also who's also a bad offensive line right now.
Even though the Titans have a worse ranked.
Or you have the people who wanted to hire Mike Vrabel the whole time, and now like the Browns are losing enough to where they can get that off clean, even though Mike Vrabel was kind of a failure his last few years in Tennessee, and somehow Derrick Henry looks like he's gotten the fountain of youth again in Baltimore once he's left the Mike Vrabel system. Well, not the Mike Vrabel system because he's defensive coordinator, but Mike Vrabel's teams. I don't know, man. It's just there's a lot of people getting a lot off, and when the team stinks, everybody gets everything off, and sometimes those are bad takes. But they don't go challenged.